Brendon Flint.
Hello, good evening. It's nice to be here in Redditch. Redditch, I understand, is famous for making needles. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Does anyone know where Redditch actually got its name from? Because I looked on the internet and couldn't find it. Anybody? There's a challenge for you. Anybody? Red ditch. That conjures up images of blood in a ditch, doesn't it? Iron. Well, where I come from is a little place called Ibstock. Now, Ibstock got its name from an Anglo-Saxon called Ibba, and he had a number of animals gathered all around there, and it was a little stockade. And that's how Ibstock got its name. Now, to get from Ibstock to here, you travel down the A42. And if you was to travel back up the A42, and instead of turning off to Ibstock, you were to keep going another few miles, your sight would be caught by a large hill, a huge hill. And on top of this hill is a church. And it looks as though the church is balancing precariously because all the ground has been excavated away from there for the quarry. And this church stands on the very grounds of what used to be an old monastery. A very, very old monastery. And one day, the abbot of the monastery came out of doors and he was tending his garden. And he was walking round and looking at the flowers, smelling that sweet English garden, and the fresh air and the sunshine, and all was at peace for a moment. And then there was the pitter-patter, 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 pitter-patter of feet running at speed. And he heard the door creak. And the pitter-patter, pitter-patter carried on. And a little lad appeared before him, absolutely breathless. Oh, Father Abbot, you've got to come, you've got to come quickly. Oh, the village has got no water. Oh, Father, there's a devil in the well. A devil in the well, said Father Abbot, and trundles off in, and he gets his little book, and he gets his holy water, and he gets his coat, and he puts his sandals on, and off they trot, 3 or 4 miles down the road until they get to the village. And all the people are gathered around in the village square where this well is, all peering down it and trembling. And the abbot goes up and looks down and he sees this vile creature. It was like horrible, frightening, terrifying. And he's got a beak, a huge beak like that of a great eagle, but bigger. And he's got claws and talons. And some of its head was covered in fur. And some of its body was covered in scales. And there were feathers. And this creature was there, and nobody could get any water, and they'd been without water for 2 or 3 days. And they looked down and they decided that this was a creature that was there, and it was a satanic creature. And the father pronounced, he says, this is not the devil, this is a griffin. Let out a terrifying screech. Now there was in this town a butcher, a great big, huge, great, powerful man. But he was not as powerful as his dog. He had this dog and it was like a cross between a Rottweiler and a deerhound. It was a savage beast. And it was renowned for its bad temper. And the butcher he used to take it out hunting with him. Now, we weren't talking about hunting for hares and rabbits and things like that. In those days, he would go out hunting bears and wolves, and this was a savage beast. And he went and fetched the dog on a great chain, and he said to the dog, he says, "Kill!" And the dog slipped loose of the chains, jumped on top of the well, snarling and snashing and slashing with its teeth, and dived at this griffin. And the griffin closed its beak around the dog and ripped it apart with its claws, and the dog was heard of no more. He yelped, and that was the end of the butcher's dog. What were they to do? And then the blacksmith came. Now the blacksmith was well renowned for making superb swords and axes for the people who lived at Ashby Castle, for the knights. And he had an axe with a great stout oak for a handle. And this axe was double-edged, and it was sharp. It is said that you could shave with this axe. It was so sharp. And he got this axe, and he looked down, and he slashed at this griffin with this axe with such power and ferocity. And it just glided off the body of the griffin and smashed against the side of the well. And the jaws of the griffin went clunk. And that was the end of the axe. And then there was a clippity-clop, 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 clippity-clop. And from the distance rode a knight on a white horse. He was so well dressed. He had all the best armour on. And he glistened in the sunlight. And he rode his charger up to see what the problem was. And everybody was telling him about this creature. And the knight looked down, and he went and he got his lance. And he threw his lance down with such accuracy and speed, but the griffin just snapped it with its beak. And the knight withdrew his sword and slashed at the beast, and the beast opened its mouth and crushed the knight's sword. But in doing that, it did reveal a weakness. And the knight said to the young boy, "Quick, quick, fetch me the best bow and arrow in the village." And the boy ran off. And within 5 minutes he was back with a great English longbow and a deadly arrow. Now these arrows, they were thick arrows. They weren't these little things that we play with today. No, they were as thick as your arm. And the knight waited and prompted and poked and shouted at the griffin. And the griffin opened its mouth and let out its terrifying screech. And just at that moment, the knight pulled back his bow and shot a great arrow right into the throat, the back of the throat of the griffin, which died and collapsed in the bottom of the well. And from that day to this, that little village has been called Griffydam. Find it on the map. The knight got on his horse and rode away, and no one knew his name. Some said it was St. George. Some said it was Ivanhoe. I leave you to decide. Thank you.